Consider the employee class, which is defined here. As you notice that it has 3 private data members. The first one is long for the ID, the second is double for the salary, and the third is a string for the name. It has one default constructor that initializes employee ID to 0, salary to 500, and name to no name. It has one setter method for the 3 data members. It is called setEmployee. It sets the ID, new salary, and name for new data members. Finally, we have 3 getter methods, one for ID, and one for salary, and one for name. Now let us see what is required to write for this main program. It is required to declare an array of objects of type employee of size 3. And then we will prompt the user to enter the ID, salary, and name for each employee. So here we need to do this part in 2 steps. First, we have to declare an array of employee of size 3. Then we will create 3 objects of type employee and assign their references to the array. After we do that, then we will see how to access those objects from the array. Let us see the implementation on JGrasp. Here is the definition for the employee class. These are the 3 data members. Here we have the constructor. We have only one constructor. And here we have a common setter for the 3 data members, which is called setEmployee. And we have 3 getters. We are going to write main program as main method inside the class itself. Public static void main string args, and we are going to write our program here. So what is required? It is required to declare an array of type employee of size 3 and prompt the user to enter the ID, salary, and name for each employee. Since we are going to read from the user, so we need to import java.util.scanner. And in our main program, we will create a scanner object. So this is data declaration scanner read equal new scanner system.n. After we created the scanner, we need now to declare an array of employee for 3. So we say employee empty square brackets. We are going to call the name of the array staff equal to new employee for 3. But here we are creating empty references. We don't have the actual objects. If we want to read from the user the ID, the salary, and name for each employee, then we have to create an object for each employee, and then we put the data inside this object. We are going to create a for loop that will go over the array elements one by one. We will use the index I. So we will say for integer I starts from 0. I will go up to staff dot length, but not equal to length, I plus a plus. In each iteration, we will create an object with the default constructor, which will assign default values to ID, salary, and name. And then we will ask the user to give us ID, salary, and name, and then we will change the data members by using the set method. So let us do it. So here we will say create an employee object and save its reference to the indexed variable. So what is the index variable? The index variable is the variable when we iterate over the loop, we use index I. So staff 0 is the first index variable. Staff 1 is the next one. So how to create an object of type employee and save it into the indexed variable? We write staff between square bracket the index, which is I, equal to, now we will create an object of type employee. And we are using the default constructor, so all the data members will be assigned default values. Now we need to read from the user. We will say system.out.print, and we will say enter your ID, and we are going to read it from the same line. Here we can define the data inside the loop, or we can define them in an area up, which is better to do it this way rather than defining all our variables in all places in our program. We will have the ID, so we will have int long, we will call it ID, and we will have double for salary, and we will have a string for name. Notice here we are given names to the variable similar to the names inside the class. But this is not always the case because these variables are defined inside main. They are not related to any of these data members. So let's read the data from the user. So first we are going to read the ID. So we have ID equal to read dot next long. And then we will print a message for the other data, which is the salary. Enter your salary. And we are going to read it into salary equal to read dot next double, and finally we are going to read the name, so we'll say enter your name, and this will be saved into name, and we will assume that we are going to read only single name, so we will use next rather than next line. After we have read ID, the salary and the name, then we need to save this data into the object. Notice when we have created the object, it was created by the default constructor. So the data members inside are assigned default values. If you want to see the default values, you go up. This is the default values. Employee ID is 0, salary is 500, name is no name. So we have to take the data prompted by the user, ID, salary, and name, and save this data into the object. So how to save that into the object? First, we have to reference the object. Notice that the index variable is the object. So we say staff index I dot, and now we call the method that will set these three data members inside the class with the input taken from the user. So we'll say set employee, and we will supply the input parameters ID, salary, and name, and the set method will change the data members inside the object. That's all what is needed to do to create three objects and save their references into the arrays. Just remember that when you create an array of any class, which is an array of object, you are actually not creating any object. You are creating, or you are having the references of a type of this object. Then in a for loop, you need to create the objects and assign their references to the array. In the second part of the problem, we need to print the ID, salary, and name for the employee with the highest salary. This is like finding a maximum. Since we have created three objects and the references are saved into the array, then we have to go over these objects one by one and find which employee or which object has the highest salary. Let us see how to do this on JGrasp. So we need to print the ID, salary, and name for the employee with the highest salary. To print the ID and name for the employee with the highest salary, first we need to find the highest salary. Finding the highest salary is similar to finding the maximum salary. And if you have a list of numbers, how to find the maximum or the highest number in the list? We need to define a variable, we will call it max, and we assign this variable the first number in the list. Then we check every number in the list after the first one, and we test it against max. If it is greater than max, we simply replace it. So how to do this if we have objects and the salary is inside the object? First, let us define the variable that will hold the maximum salary, and I'm going to call it highest salary, and we will assume that the first staff salary will be the highest salary. So how to reference the first staff? We have the array staff, and the first employee is at index 0, and now we need to get to the salary data member of this object. Remember, we have getters for the three data members. Let's go up. So we have get emp ID for getting the ID, get salary, and get name. So if we want to get the salary for the first employee, we simply write get salary using the getter method. Then after we assuming that the variable highest salary for the first staff is the maximum salary or the highest salary, now we need to check the other staff salaries against this variable. So we need a for loop, but the for loop should start with index 1, not 0, because 0 is for staff 0, and we already assigned his or her salary as the maximum salary. So we should start from 1, and this should not exceed staff dot length I plus plus. So basically it will go to staff number 1 and staff number 2. So employee 1 and employee 2. So what to do? We need to check the salary for the current indexed variable object. So we say if staff that is at index I get salary, if it is greater than the highest salary, then we need to replace the highest salary with the current salary of the current staff. So we say highest salary is equal to staff I dot get salary. And this will give us the highest salary. So we can maybe print it system dot out dot println, and we can say that the highest salary is, and we print the value for the highest salary. But this will only give me the highest salary. It will not give me the name of the employee or the staff with the highest salary, and will not give me also the ID. So how to keep a track of the staff that has the highest salary? We do this by tracking variables. Now wherever maximum salary is there, we need to assign these tracking variables to the employee that has that salary. What I mean by this? Let me show you what I mean by this. Now, we are looking for the highest salary. At the same time, we want to see what is the ID of the employee that has the highest salary. To do this, define a variable. Remember that for the ID, the data type is long, and I'm going to call it max ID. Similar to what we have done for the highest salary, we will assume that the maximum ID will be for the first staff ID. So we will say staff 0.get emp ID with capital letter D. And for the name, we will call it maximum name. So string max name is equal to staff 0.get name. So here we have two tracking variables, one for ID and one for the name. Whenever we change the maximum, remember that at the beginning, the highest salary is for the first staff, and the maximum ID for the first staff, and the maximum name is for the first staff. Now when we change the highest salary with a different staff, then we have to change the corresponding maximum ID and maximum name. So therefore we write max ID is equal to staff, the current staff which is at index I, dot get emp ID. And also for the maximum name, we write max name is equal to staff I dot get name. So whenever we change the value of highest salary, we also need to change the tracking variables for the highest salary. After we finish, we just simply print them, and we say here system dot out dot println, and we say the employee ID with the highest salary is, and we print the maximum ID. Similarly for the name, we will say system dot out dot println the employee with the highest salary. We should say that the employee name with the highest salary we say is, and we print the maximum name. So here we have printed the maximum ID, highest salary, and the maximum name. Remember that we were looking for the highest salary and we used maximum ID and maximum name only for tracking the employee with the maximum or highest salary. Notice that we have defined two tracking variables, one for ID and one for name. What if we have more data in the object we want to print for the employee with the highest salary? Then we need to assign also variables for them. There is a better way to do it. Instead of tracking the information of the employee with the highest salary, we can just simply track the index. So if we know the index of the staff or employee with the highest salary, then we can reach the data members of this object easily using this index. Let me show you what I mean by this. I'm going to delete these two tracking variables and I'm going to define one as an integer. I'm going to call it max index. And this will be equal to 0 in the beginning. Why? Because the highest salary is for the staff at index 0. Then inside the loop, whenever we change the value for the highest salary with a new staff, then we have to update maximum index. And we are going to replace it by the new index, which is I. Because if the current index variable, which is an object, has a salary greater than highest salary, then we have to change the maximum index for that staff. And now to print the ID, salary, and name for the employee with the highest salary, we use maximum index. So let us print the ID first. So we use staff max index dot get emp ID. And now for the salary, we can keep highest salary, or also we can use staff maximum index dot get salary. And now for the name, we simply say staff max index dot get name. This way it makes it more efficient. So all what you have to do is look for the index of the employee with the highest salary, then use this index to display the information of the object. Before we go to the next part of the question, let us test if there are any errors. So we will compile it. So there is an error. It says that I is redefined. So where is redefined? Oh, here we forgot to close the loop. So we need to format now our program, and let's see again if there are no errors. Again, we are having a problem with the brackets. It seems that we have an extra bracket here. So let us try compile it. And now it is free of error. So we will format it. Now it is formatted and it has no errors. The last part in this problem, we prompt the user to enter an employee ID and we search for it. If found, print the name and salary of the employee. Otherwise, print no such employee is found. Basically, this is a search problem. So what does it mean? It means we check the input, which is the ID, with all IDs of the employees. So we will go over the employees one by one from the beginning until the end. If any of the employees' ID is equal to the input ID, we stop, we print the name, and we print the salary. And if none of the employees' ID is equal to the input ID, then we print a message, no such employee is found. So how to do this? First, we will prompt the user for the ID, and we will tell the user enter an ID. Then we will save this ID into a variable. We will call it ID. And remember that ID was defined as long integer. Then we will search for all employee IDs one by one. If one of these employees' ID is equal to ID, then we should stop, print the information, and exit. Now, what if none of these employees' ID is equal to ID? Then we must find a solution. So we need first to write a for loop that will go over the indices of the array, staff.length. And in each iteration, we are going to check the ID of the employee. So we say if staff I dot get emp ID If it's equal ID, then we have found an ID of an employee that's equal to ID. Now, if an ID is there that is equal to ID, I mean, if one of the employees' ID is equal to ID, then here we can print the information and exit the loop. What if none of the employees' ID is equal to ID? So in this case, that the for loop, I will start 0, 1 up to the last one, and at the end, it will stop the loop and exit the loop. So how to tell when we exit the loop that we have reached the end of the loop and none of the IDs is equal to the input ID? We will implement our search here similar to the index of method for string. Remember that if we have a string, let me just write it down here, s is equal to, let's say, hello. And if you want to look for a letter inside, we use index of, let's say we are looking for H. If it is found, it will tell you where is its index. If it is not found, if you remember, it retains -1. -1 tells you that it could not find the letter H inside the string. So now if you call s.indexOf, and here H is a small letter, this index of will retain -1. However, if you write capital letter H, it will retain 0 because H is at index 0. So how to implement this for our search? We will define a variable integer, and we are going to call it index. In the beginning, we will say that it is equal to -1. When we say -1, it means still we could not find the employee ID. Now, once we go inside here, then immediately we will change index and we will make it equal to I. And we should stop the loop. So whenever we have a hit, one of the employees' ID is equal to ID, then we will change the value of index to the current value of I, because this is the place where we have found the employee that has the same ID as the input. Then we should not continue. We should break the loop and go outside. Now, once we go outside, we need to check for index. Now, if index is equal to -1, that means it has never been changed. So that means we checked for the first employee, not equal ID. Second employee, not equal ID. All employees, none of them is equal to ID. We go outside the loop. That means the value of index has never been changed. However, if we found one of the employees' ID is equal to ID, we will go inside this if statement and index will change to the current I value. And we will break. So when we go outside, now index is not equal to -1 anymore. So here we have the two choices. Now if index is equal to -1, we will print a message, system.out.println, and we will say no such employee is found. Otherwise, the question says that we need to print the name and salary of this employee. So we need to open a bracket because we need to print, or we need two print statements. The first print statement, system.out.println, we will say the employee is found. The name is, let us write it on separate line, system.out.println. We will say the name is, and how to print the name of the employee that we have found his or her ID. We simply call the method for getting the name. So we will say staff, and it was found at index.getName. And now to print the salary, again we will say the salary is, and we will say staff, and it was found at index.getSalary. So this is how it is, the search is implemented in loops. We have a variable that's index equal to -1, and we have a loop that visits every element in the array. If we found the element, then we change the value of index to the current location of that element, and we exit the loop. If none of the employees' ID is equal to ID, that means we will never come to this if statement. So the value of index will still be -1 until the end of the loop. When we go outside from the loop, then we will check for index. If it is -1, then no such employee is found. Otherwise, it was found, and where it was found at index because of this statement. Let us check for errors. there is an error. It says that it is expected to have here semicolon, and let us check again. Maybe one bracket is missing. Check again. So here ID, it says variable ID is already defined in method main. So it was already maybe defined. Yes, maybe defined inside. Yes, it was defined earlier in here. So we can reuse it, by the way. So we can just simply reuse it and read again into this variable. It is obvious that the output is misleading. It is asking for ID, but it doesn't show that we have more than one employee. So it's better that we print employee number 1, enter your ID, enter your name, enter your salary, like that. So let us end the program. Let us go to the loop that is responsible for reading, which is here. So we will print a message, system.out.println, and in here we will say employee number, and we will print the number, and we can get the number from I. But I, you know, that starts from 0 because we are talking about arrays. But we want to print starting from 1, employee 1, 2, and so on. So therefore, instead of I, we are going to print I plus 1 instead. Now let us run the program and see how it works. So now it says employee 1, enter ID. Let's say the ID is 1. It says enter salary, let's say 500. Enter name, it is Ahmed. For employee number 2, let us say that the ID is 2, that the salary is 700, and the name is Mahmoud. And let us say for employee number 3, the ID is 3, the salary is 650, and the name is Muna. And now the employee ID with the highest salary is 2, and it is obvious Mahmoud. The highest salary is 700, and the employee name with the highest salary is Mahmoud. Now we need to search for an employee. Let us first search for one. Let's say we want to search for the last employee, which is Muna. So I'll put number 3, and it says that the employee is found. The name is Muna. The salary is 650. Let us try the program so that the ID does not exist among the employee IDs. So we will run it again. So we need to input the data again one more time. 1, 500, Ahmed. 2, 700, Mahmoud. And 3, 650, Muna. Let us give the ID, for example, 6. So now it says no such employee is found, and the program is working correctly.